Good morning and welcome to the video for Wednesday, January the 6th. This is going to be for fourth grade. So today we're going to be working with comparing fractions. You will want to have something to shade or color in your book. It doesn't have to be color. You could just go ahead and use your regular pencil and kind of shade in as we use these models. We will do some of that on our second page. And then you guys have the option, if you would like to do it that way, you'll want a separate sheet of paper for when we get to this page here on 367. So that you can go ahead and set up your models like we'll do in the first couple problems to help you find your comparisons. So let's go ahead and take a look. And of course, we also have the option of using our strategy that we worked on a lot before Christmas break. Especially the last couple days that we were reviewing, but we had already done the lessons from earlier in the chapter. So we are going to compare 3/8 to 1/4. And so to do that, the first thing they want us to do is go ahead and use a common denominator. So to find that, we want to figure out how we can get from 4 to 8. So the number of times we can count by 4 to get to 8 is going to be our number that would go on the bottom. So we can count twice by 4 to get to 8, which means we also need to put a 2 up here and do 1 times 2, and that would give us 2 8s. And so now we can go ahead and we have our models already made for us. We can go ahead and shade those in. So let's say here's 1, here's 2, and here's 3. And then if I go ahead and start from the same spot, it's a little bit easier to see. I've only got this section filled in for the right-hand side, and I've got 3 parts filled in here. So this side would be greater. We can also use a common numerator. So what I'm going to tell you is we can go ahead and do this. So let's go ahead and fill in 3 parts here. And then we can fill in 3 parts here. So without worrying about this part, in third grade, one of the things that we talked about was the smaller the number that we have here, the larger the piece. So this has 12 relatively small pieces that are smaller than the pieces of the size that we have for the shape that is 3/8. And so if the top numbers are the same, we can say that the larger side would be the part that has the smaller denominator compared to the other one. And so if we look and go ahead and shade this in, again, we're going to have 3 parts. So we're going to go past a little bit here. We would have to fill in part of this column here to be able to match this using this model. So that one would be greater than. And so to compare that to 1/4, we would say that 1/4 is equal to 3/12. So we would do this part here to get this. And so we're multiplying 1 times 3 to get 3, 4 times 3 to get 12. And in the interest of time, I'm not as worried about what the words are that go with the question. It looks like they wanted us more booths with one thing than another. So face painting compared to sand art. And so the face painting would have won out on that. So let's go ahead and take a look at our next page. So what I want you to do is to go ahead and make a couple models. So I'm going to start that myself. And so I'm going to use the lines. Now, this may not work as well for you, just based on how you do this, but I'm going to try to use the lines and keep everything lined up straight. But I can zoom in so you guys can see it a little bit better. If you need to use more space, maybe do 2 lines and then go across and then up, and then skip a space and then do 2 lines and come across and come up, and we can do it that way. But I'm going to do 1 line for each of them, at least for this first one. And then I may change that on the second one. So I'm going to skip down here for my second one and try to make it as even as I can. I'm really bad at doing this, and I'm not pulling out the ruler tool to help. So I'm going to cut this first one in half, and then I'm going to cut each of those halves into halves. And I'm going to use a different color. So I'm going to fill in 3 parts out of 4. And then for our next one, oops, I'm going to cut this up into thirds. So I'm just kind of guessing. I will tell you that since we're only counting 1 part out of 3 for this one, there's going to be a huge difference. So you can already tell, if you remember our lesson from Monday, if we're comparing for benchmarks, the 3/4 side would be closer to either the 1/2. Actually, we could say it would be closer to 1 than 1/3 would be, looking at our picture. And so our comparison would be greater than, so 3/4 is greater than 1/3. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and do a 2. So you can go ahead and do this. Now keep in mind, we can also find the answer just by sorry, I'm trying to concentrate because I just messed up. All right, let's get our eraser. We can also do a comparison by comparing the size of each part that we're counting. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and do the 8 on the bottom. So I'm going to draw a line through here, and a line through here, and a line through here to break it up into fourths, and then use that second blue line to cut across the middle. And I'm going to fill in 3 of those parts. So I'm going to do the top and bottom here, and then the top one here. For this one, I'm just going to have to kind of wing it as best I can. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the 3/8 compared to 3/5. Assuming that I did it correctly, which I don't think I did. I think this is slightly off kilter. It's not lined up perfectly. So that kind of messes with things a little bit. The 3/5 side, sorry, I also didn't shade it correctly. That doesn't help. So yeah, the 3/5 side is going to be more than half of our shape being filled in, and the 3/8 part is just going to be this much. So 3/5 is going to be a little bit bigger than 3/8. And so now let's go ahead and look at, I'm going to skip this one, and let's go to 4/5 and 2/3. This one works easily enough that we could go ahead and change the 3/4 side to parts over 8, and then it becomes really easy. If we're going to use a picture, let's go ahead and use this one. Now, both of these are one piece away from being a whole. So in this case, we could kind of use our numerator comparison to say that there is probably more of this missing than there is with this. That was the way that I explained it in 3rd grade. So the larger the piece, in this case, the more that is missing compared to a whole than what we would have here, because the parts are larger. So let's take a look at what that might look like. So I'm again going to try to make this into 5 equal parts as best I can. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to cheat and erase this extra bit here. Maybe. Come on. All right, there we go. So I have 5 relatively even-sized pieces. I am counting 4 of those 5 pieces. And so I have almost the entire shape filled in. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a similar sized shape, but I'm only going to break it up into 3 equal parts this time. And so this would give me 1 part, 2 parts, and 3 parts, and I'm going to fill in 2 of those. So it's not exactly perfect, but we can see when we go ahead and get both of these drawn out, this one is going to come out a little bit farther to the right. So there is more of the 4/5 shape than there is of the 2/3, which kind of matches again. The larger piece, we have more missing compared to the small amount that we're missing here to get to a whole. So 4/5 would be greater than. Let's take a look at number 2 at the bottom. So if we look at number 2 at the bottom, can we use simplest form to compare 8/10 and 3/5? So one of the things that we practiced, same thing with finding common denominators or equivalent fractions by using multiplication. I mentioned we could do that doing division as well. So is it possible to divide to get the 8/10 side down to parts over 5? Is there a number I can divide 10 by and get 5 as the answer? If so, then that would be a way that I can reduce my fraction and put it in simplest form to do my comparison. So think about that for a moment. If you need to pause the video to have a little bit of time, hopefully me talking for this long, you've had a chance to think about, hey, wait, I think I know the answer to this. So yes, I can divide. So what I would be able to do, let's go ahead and just write it in like this. I could go ahead and divide by 2. And so if I did that, my equivalent fraction that would be in simplest form, so smallest number on the top and bottom that we can get, would be 4 parts. So 8 divided by 2 would give us 4 over 5. And so now I would be able to do my comparison. 4/5 would end up being larger than 3/5. So depending on if it shows up in this order, or if they changed it, we might use a different symbol. In the order that they have it written, we would use greater than. So 8/10 or 4/5 would be greater than 3/5. So let's go to our next page. And I'm going to give you a chance to pause the video. I don't think we're going to do every single one of these, but I definitely want to go ahead and do number 1 and number 2 to figure out what we can do. I would probably do this slightly differently. All right, so we are not going to get from 4s up to 10 by multiplying, not with what we already know how to do. We could do it by working with decimals, but we're not doing that yet. So I'm going to show you something that we can do that's slightly different for this. Number 2, but we can definitely do number 1 the way it's already written. So we want to compare 2/5 and 1/10. We want to go ahead and change the 2/5 to parts out of 10. So to be able to do that, we're going to take our top number, which is 2, and write that in here. We're going to write our bottom number, which is 5 here. And then think about how many times we can count by 5 to get to 10. And so that's the number that we are going to write in for the top and bottom here. And then we're going to do our multiplication. So go ahead and pause the video if you need to be able to do that. And when you're ready, go ahead and hit play again. All right, so we are going to do 2 times and then 2. So 2 times 5 would give us 10. And that's what we're looking for. We want to get to parts out of 10. So I'm going to multiply my top number by 2 as well. And so I would be able to compare 4/10 to 1/10. And so they give you a hint for that. And so we could go ahead and say that 4/10 or 2/5 is greater than 1/5. And so, oh, okay, I see what they wanted to do. They wanted us to use a common numerator. I guess I could probably take a look at reading that, but you don't even have it on your screen. So let me scoot this over just a little bit so you guys can actually see that part. There we go. That should work a little bit nicer. All right, so we want to use a common numerator. I wasn't seeing that when I was looking over here because I have it covered up way my layout is. So we need to get to 6 on the top. So we're going to do 3 times what number to get to 6? Think about that for a moment. And then that is going to give us the number that we would multiply 4 by for the bottom. So if you need to pause to think about that for a moment, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, let's go ahead and keep going. So we're going to do 3 times 2 to get to 6. But if I do that, this 3/4 is going to be 6 parts out of 8 instead of 6 parts out of 10. And so again, if I'm comparing the size of a 10th size part to a part that is only 1/8 size, my 1/8 size is going to be larger than that. So I am going to be, yeah, my 1/8 size is going to be larger. So if we're counting the amount that we already have, then we would be able to 6/8 is going to be larger than 6/10. So a 10th size part is smaller than an 8th size part. And so if we are counting based on the amount that we have, then that would be greater than. All right. Let's look at number 3, number 4. So we're going to do something similar. We're going to change this to parts over 12. This one's already set up for us, and then we're going to make this one parts over 12. So we're going to do number 3, number 4, and number 6. So go ahead and work on these 3 on your own. I am not going to worry about making a picture. So if you want to make a picture, go ahead and do that. I'm not going to take the time to do that because I would have to pause the video and be able to do that, which actually I think I can do. I may try that actually. So I'm going to pause the video and then I'm going to go ahead and tell you to pause now because once I'm done talking with this sentence, I'm going to restart my video after I pause it and draw my picture, and we'll see how this ends up working because now I have the ability to pause it. So I'm going to try this and see what happens. All right, so assuming this works properly, I went ahead and drawn. It took me a couple minutes to do this. It's actually a little bit trickier than I was expecting to get the 12s to work out okay, but that's all right. So let me scoot this a little bit. There we go. All right, so I've got the first one. We're doing 7 parts out of 8, so we have almost the entire sheet filled in compared to only 2 8s. And so this one is very much obviously greater than the other one. So here are my base pictures for our next one. So we are going to take 5 of these parts. So we almost have half of the shape filled in compared to 3/6. And I messed up a little bit on that, but that's okay. So I have exactly half of the shape filled in compared to just shy of half. So the 3/6 side is going to be greater, so we're going to use less than. And then for the last one, we have 6/12, which is going to be exactly half of the shape. So again, I'm going to shade it this direction so that it's easier to compare. And then I have 2 parts out of 4. So if I go ahead and shade in, it looks like we have exactly the same amount, and that's what we should have because both of these are worth the same amount, that it's equal to 1/2. All right. Let's skip down to number 11. So I want you to think of a number that we could put up here to make this statement true. So if we are saying that 1/2 is greater than something over 3, what would be a number that we could use for the numerator? So think about that for a moment. Pause the video if you need to. And then once I give you the answer for this, I'm going to have you do the next couple on your own. And then we'll review those as well. Okay, so assuming that you've had a chance to think about that, we could either count 1 part over 3, which would make sense, or we could actually say 0 parts out of 3. Because if we're counting nothing, then this side obviously has to be greater because we're actually counting something on that side. And take a drink of water. So I want you to do something similar to that for number 12. Now we can find an equivalent fraction for this one for parts out of 10. But when we do that, we want to make sure that we write a number that makes sense for parts over 5. So You may want to draw a picture or look at another picture that we've already done. Actually, those are parts out of 8, not parts out of 10. I think somewhere I drew a picture that had parts out of 10, or you guys did that we could use. I could be misremembering. Yep, I am. All right. Unless we did it in Monday's lesson. Everything kind of blurs together at this point. When I'm recording lots of videos over several days, it's hard to remember what I talked about when, because I do things in different orders. All right, so I want you to figure out what number we could put up here that we are going to have something that is larger than 3/10. Keep in mind that 3/10 is right now less than 1/2 of 10. So you can use that to kind of help you. You can do something similar with this one. Again, 5/12 is just short of being 1/2. So you can figure out what number you might be able to put to make this side larger. So go ahead and look at both of those. Pause the video if you need to, and I'll go ahead and review the answers. So hit play when you're ready. So for this one, we could actually start as low as 2 parts out of 5, because that would give us 4 out of 10. And so anything 2 or larger will end up working for that. For this one, we want to use at least 2. So 2 or larger. So if I went ahead and used the picture that we had, we could use this picture. So let's say we filled in 5 parts here, and 3 parts out of 6, we're doing parts out of 3. Let me go back in, and I'll draw an extra one down here to show you. So instead of adding that extra line from the top to bottom, if I go ahead and do it like this, but actually do it correctly. Actually, here, yeah. So I could go ahead and fill in across here and fill in 1, 2, 3, 4, and then part of this one. But I would be able to fill in, once I get past one of these and fill in the second whole shape, then that would work for that. So hope that makes sense. Let's go ahead and go to our homework, since we're already about at the time that I want to spend on this. So for the homework, we are doing 2 through 9 on the front. So you have room to go ahead and find equivalent fractions, or even make a picture. You could use some of the previous pictures that we've used. The ones for parts out of 10, it looks like we're working with 5s and 10s. So you can go ahead and use this multiplication strategy to change this to parts out of 10, or change this to parts out of 10 to go ahead and get your comparison. So I want you to do those. Number 8 and number 9, you might want to make a picture to help you figure that out for both of those. Yeah, you'll want to make a picture for both of those to help you. We're not doing number 10. On the back, we are doing number 3 through number 6. So we want the value of the digit 6 in this number for number 3. For number 4, it looks like we're doing multiplication. So we're doing 12 rows times, I believe it's 13 seats in each row. My pictures don't come out very clear when I do this and then upload them. So it looks like we would be doing 12 times 13. So if you remember your math facts for counting by 12s, which you should, hopefully, or at least you can start with 10 times 12 and then work your way forward from there if you don't want to do the 12 times 13 and do the traditional kind of method for doing multiplication, where we would do 3 times 12, and then we put our 0 down and do get the answer to 12 times 10 for the bottom row, and then add those together. Let's see. Number 5, we're doing 12 black and white photos and 18 colored photos. So we want to find a common factor for 12 and 18 to figure out, or common factors of 12 and 18 to figure out how many different photos we could put in each row. And then the last one, we want to go ahead and reduce this fraction. So we talked about the strategy using division that we would do during this lesson. So we're just changing this to simplest form. We want to make it small as we possibly can. So if you have the option to take two even numbers and divide by 2, that would be a great place to start. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me in Google Classroom. Hope you have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.